We're just enjoying the music this afternoon.
Yep.
So this is the final segment here on Spectrum Radio, and we're gonna continue. We're gonna continue the conversation in here. Yeah, I got it right now.
Yeah.
There's just so many levers I have to push down and fill up right now. For our listeners
Getting
out
on
there,
those biceps.
for our listeners out there, I'm a bit silent this afternoon because I'm working on the controls and getting everything right. Sometimes I didn't get them right, but we're gonna continue. We have Ferlin still on the phone line. So Ferlin, thank you very much for staying with us throughout the show. We're gonna open the phone lines right now for persons to call in. They can call us on 231-7088. That's 231-7088. You can call and share your opinion. Feel free to say whatever you want. And in the meantime, Janelle, you were having...
Right, no, yeah. So Frolan and I were talking about, I guess initially, maybe about half an hour ago, we wanted to talk about how the kind of activities or effort that would be needed to sort of move away from like the church or religious bodies to a wider society and the roles and responsibilities of, and how do we get to a point where we don't see homosexuality the way we do. We don't view it that way and have this sort of negative attitude towards people who are so identified, right? Yeah. So what do you think is needed? How do we? I mean, it's a long journey, obviously, and if we had the answer like that, then we probably wouldn't be here today.
It's tremendous work when it comes to pursuing liberal rights, freedoms. But one of the very important things to realize in relation to change is that change itself within Guyanese society, it shouldn't be deliberated by any one specific group, especially when it concerns human rights. So no specific individual or group has any sort of privileged position over any other individual or group. And it's very important that we establish that and we understand what that means. And what it means is basically that we all have a role to play in collective societal change. If we want a society free from violence, we have to collectively work together to make that happen. If we want a society free of discrimination, that also includes collective effort. And this, by extension, means that we have to stretch an arm open to the religious organizations who have a tremendous effect on society and how we develop our morals and ethics, and ultimately they do have an influence on public policy. So, but one of the other important aspect to understand is that while we live in a very religious society, that religious society isn't dominated by one specific religion. It's comprised of many religions and even belief systems that are not religious fundamentally. So, everyone has a collective role to play when it comes to forming this ideal society that we want to live in. And I think when it comes to LGBT human rights groups or human rights groups generally, they play a very important hand in shaping the entire social dynamics of change. And I think it's definitely a collaborative effort that would be required, and it's one that we ought to be very careful with who are the players, who are the stakeholders, and how much influence those stakeholders or players have when it comes to legislation and public policy.
Mm-hmm. Right, so which brings me to the point about making the changes legally or legislatively. There've been touted ideas such as having a referendum to amend specific laws as it relates to I think specifically when it came to Bulgari. but that's not an approach that you want to take when it comes to human rights, right? Like leaving that up to, like you said earlier, up to other people to determine.
The entire slave trade, what justified the slave trade, the Atlantic slave trade in Europe, and what you'll read in history is that what justified by not just politically or economically, but what also justified was a religious component. So scripture was used to justify a segment of the population and a segment of foreign peoples to be considered lower class individuals compared to those who want to impose a privileged position above all others. So this is something that we have to be very careful about if we're going to talk about having a majority influence, because in some cases it does not turn out to be a very nice scenario. But like you said, when it comes to human rights, that's something that we have to be very careful about when deliberating who should have what rights and who should have certain specific rights. And I think the gender orientation, sexual diversity discussion is all about inclusion. It's all about how do we integrate these people into a society that is predominantly governed by, let's say, Christian values, Christian virtues, Christian religious perspectives. I mean, some people might not see it that way, but really and truly, when we look at the underlying framework of Guyanese society, there are a lot of Christian elements there. There are a lot of Christian morality as its basis. So we want to ensure that as we talk about inclusion, we also talk about what those values and virtues and moral systems, what role they play in either inhibiting inclusion or encouraging inclusion. So these are the things that we definitely want to ensure we talk about.
Right, you're listening to, you have a question?
No, I'm just saying that it seems like our listeners are a bit sleepy.
Right, I was just going to remind them of the number.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, right, so you're listening to Spectrum Radio. We are chatting about gender and gods, and you can give us a call if you're interested with a question or a comment on our topic today, 231-7088, 231-7088.
Yeah, you don't necessarily, because I think people are thinking that they have to be a part of the LGBT community. It's just like a general, if you're out there and you want to let your voice be heard on this topic, on gender and what it means, and religion, you can just send us your comment. Give us a call.
Yeah, I was really hoping that the other guests came, because we sort of like zeroed in on LGBTQI, but then, you know, gender also included there are other minorities, right, that groups that, you know, are affected like by religion. Like, I think women in some cases are not allowed. So I was really hoping that.
Well, I am a part, because a lot of people don't know this, but I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I'm a baptized member of the church.
Oh wow!
And there is the priesthood ordinances where women are not allowed to take.
Yeah, no, I was home one day, and this couple came to my house, Jehovah's Witnesses, and I opened the door, and the woman, she sort of like asked the man. So the man was speaking, she wasn't saying anything, and then she turned and she asked him for sort of like permission to speak, to intervene, because I was asking a bunch of questions. Like, it was a mistake that they made to come to my house. And I just let him in anyway, and so I was asking all these questions, and she wanted to speak. So I'm like, excuse me? So she asked him for permission, and then they try to convince me, you know, like it's allowed, women are, but if like there's a man who's the senior person leading if he's in a church setting, then you know, like the person has to grant women permission. I'm like, okay, yeah, that was the end of that
conversation.
Yeah, no, I was not going to. There was no way I was going to continue having that conversation.
Well, I don't know about that, but in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that is not the case. It's just that certain priesthood.
So how are you there? Like, why are you part of an arrangement that doesn't allow women to just?
But over the time, things change. And recently, one of the laws changed where persons from the LGBT community, their children could not be baptized. Before that couldn't happen. And so now the laws are changing in the church, and year by year, as time goes by, things are changing.
So you're hoping to be
so
part
I'm
of the change process.
Yes, I'm hoping to be one of those persons to push for change. And when I went to the church, because I was one of those persons that did not believe in religion, and I just thought that organized religion was just a plot to take your money. And I went there.
It's a plot for a lot of things. That's part of it.
Yeah, so
I know, like, people probably be so upset by my comments.
Yeah.
I have an aunt. I was raised Christian, so I have an aunt, and she gets upset every time I say something. Like, she's very, very Christian. And then I'd say, well, she says, you gotta come to church. And I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna happen, right? She's like, why, Janelle, why? She's so I figure if I see her often enough, I'll probably kill her, like, stress. And then she says, like, I said, I don't do organized religion. She's like, oh my God, what happened to you?
No, I didn't do organized religion until like last August. And I got
So what changed?
I went to the church one time and I was just feeling like low and down and like I was gonna give up, and then I realized I went to church one day. One of my friends came and said, "Come to church, maybe you'll feel better." And since then,
And you felt better.
Yeah, I felt.
Oh, good for you.
And I've been better.
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
For that sort of uplifted spirited feeling. So it's kind of nice to have that feeling if you found it. I myself grew up Christian most of my young life, and I felt very fulfilled. And I think the time that when I left my faith, which was Christianity at the time, I think I was around 16 years of age, and I just had a lot of doubt. I had a lot of questions that the church community itself couldn't answer. So.
That was my problem.
Yeah, she's saying that.
No, I was saying that was my problem, and that's why I left. It's because there were so many questions, and that could not be answered. I can't blindly do that. I'm too scientific a person to blindly just do that. But yeah, like you said, like Karl Marx had said, I think like religion was the opium of the people.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
Drug. It could be like a drug, but it could be a good drug. It could be a good force for change. It's all about the players.
Definitely. And I feel like as a community, we should not decide what aspects of the societal ills and just uplifted commas that we focus on. There are lots of other issues that are taking place that not only the church but religious groupings together should work on, and don't nitpick on things
on
that are
one particular one.
Right.
I think they focus on the wrong ones. They're like, oh, in Guyana, the buggery laws, they should keep them, they should not get rid of them. And then there are people who are stealing, there are people who are going to jail for drugs.
There are children who are being abused.
Yeah, there are women who are being
in the church
battered.
in some instances, and yeah.
Added dimension to that, maybe. Yeah, am I still here?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I want to add a dimension to that. Maybe it might help you guys understand what's happening, because it's the understanding that I get to explain what's happening when it comes to those scenarios. And the thing that I notice about religion is that, especially when it comes to this notion of change, is that whenever an idea is introduced and it goes against the norm, the tradition itself, or it might seem to contradict, at least on the surface, scripture, people get very afraid. They get very afraid because, a lot of people don't want to hold on to something that changes, that seems to give the impression that it's very relativistic over time. A lot of people want to hold on to something that's stable, that's uniform. And I think fear of change can be a real thing in traditional communities, especially traditional religious organizations. So there's that component.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so do you think we've still got a couple more minutes? Do you
Yeah,
think
we have like about 3 minutes.
are we making enough progress though? I mean, I don't know, or are you? What are you in terms of?
I would say that, I mean, when it comes to gender rights, I mean, you guys alluded to women's rights issues that still exist today, and it's not surprising because, at least to me, it's not surprising because tradition is a very powerful force. There's the conservative side and there's the very progressive liberal side that wants to see certain things mobilize and be effective for the benefit of all. The only way that we can actually make any genuine progress is if we make that appropriate collaborative effort. And some non-believers like myself might think that to do so you have to be aggressive towards religion, you have to be hostile. I mean, in some respects, those are warranted moves, but in other respects, especially when it comes to human rights, it doesn't really work out well. So the best way to really deal with tradition and progress is to really sit down, have that conversation, and see if there can be a way to keep tradition intact, but just show that there's an alternative perspective out there, and it's just what it is. It's not. It doesn't have to be part of the tradition. It doesn't have to include that side of the story into the tradition, which would be great, but it doesn't have to. But what would be ideal is if we can just be appreciative that we are diverse, we are a complex society, and fundamentally it's a democratic society, and we should all feel included, welcome, and at home, really.
Okay, well, Ferlin, thank you very much. It's that time now where we wrap up because it's now 17 hours 54.
Essentially, he just told you talk too much.
No, I
You
didn't.
know, right? He sounds ungrateful after you stayed when his other guests didn't show up.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing. So, Ferlin, thank you very much for tuning in. You're a first guest. Your first guest that
First
stayed.
and last.
That stayed. That came in from another country, actually, and over the phone. So I want to say thank you very much for taking the time out to do that. And we hope to see you in person really soon, so we can continue conversations like these. But I just want to say thank you for staying with us for the last 2 hours.
Thank you too.
Maybe
We gotta
invitation to a prayer.
I've seen you on Facebook, your comments on Facebook, and I've liked a couple of them. So I am really impressed by your thoughts on some issues, because I haven't been exposed to a whole lot of them, but I've seen them around. So good job. I'm not on Facebook anymore though.
She's been on Facebook for a while now.
Oh yeah? What just shoot it here, maybe some others can follow it. Okay.
So you can tell
I was
the
gonna
listeners.
say share it with listeners so they can all check it out, Oh, you mean like it's the same as the actual rationale is spelled?
Yeah, well, I asked Joel to publish.
So yeah, what is it called? On my rationale. Dot WordPress. Yeah, that's pretty
Okay.
cool. We'll check it out.
Well, guys, this has been Spectrum Radio for April 28th. We do look forward to seeing you, or we look forward to having you listen to us next week. We're going to be here same time, same station, different co-host. Well, I'm going to be here next week, but different co-host. I'm hoping Nazima is back. And Janelle, it's been awesome having you here.
Hoot hoot.
Well, until next week, guys, my name is Colin Abrams.
And I'm Janelle Prasad. Not until next week, until Nazima can make it again.
Okay, see ya.
Bye. Alright, so for a little